Hi there, we are Lance and Kirsten from Panthera Photo Safaris, a tour operator based in South Africa, sending our clients through the most amazing locations throughout Africa to get their once-in-a-lifetime wildlife shots.
Unfortunately, here in South Africa, the same animals that we love and adore desperately need our help. COVID-19 not only destroyed many human lives, but put a complete halt of tourism in South Africa. Even though the borders are slowly opening up again, the money lost through lack of visitors means unemployment in the poorest communities has risen, and the security and protection for endangered species in reserves and national parks went down. Some game reserves and anti-poaching teams have lost up to 85% of their funding overnight, with no signs of funds returning anytime soon.
With the number of desperate individuals on the rise, poaching incidents are at an all-time high. Rhino poaching alone is the worst it has ever been in history. Here in the Greater Kruger area, we used to be the stronghold for the world's rhino population. Now experts are telling us that we may have lost 75% of the remaining individuals in the last 18 months alone. On average in South Africa, we lose a rhino every 10 hours. In the Greater Kruger, we estimate we have less than 4,000 individuals remaining. These numbers simply cannot be sustained, and we must act now. Otherwise, we are at very real risk of losing this amazing species forever in the next couple of years.
Aside from rhino poaching, the number of snares set by local communities for bushmeat have risen exponentially. Snaring is a widespread and serious problem, killing millions of animals across Africa each year. It's a highly effective method that involves a low cost and effort from the poacher. Wildlife that manages to escape seldom survive without human intervention and often succumb to their injuries, dying a slow and painful death. This is where we can come in.
We work alongside a small number of amazing individuals who have dedicated their lives to protecting our wildlife. These include vets, helicopter pilots, and anti-poaching units. Your donations go directly into a kitty ready for an emergency call-out where there are only two factors which will determine the outcome of the survival of that animal, and these are time and money.
Our main goal is to raise enough funds where we can send the vet team as soon as they get reports of an injured animal, as far too often there is a delay and the animals move off and cannot be relocated, resulting in the death of the animal.
Your donations go towards two main areas when it comes to these small operations. The first is the vet teams and the drugs that they use. We have to sedate the animals to be able to work with them safely and effectively. We also often have to apply antibiotics to make sure that we can clear any infections caused by human interactions. The second main area is funding our incredible air team. We make use of both fixed-winged aircraft and helicopters for our small operations. Ranging from 500 Rand for a fixed-wing aircraft per hour up to 7,000 Rand per hour for a helicopter, these make up the majority of the funds needed. However, they are a vital part of the operation, ensuring that we can find, dart, and monitor these endangered species.
Helicopters are a very important tool, especially with the vets. We can get to a scene quickly. We can immobilize an animal, get it to a working area where it's safe for the vets and the people on the ground. So you basically can't operate without the helicopter. We use a helicopter for darting because we can get an animal to a place where it's workable, so the ground teams can get there. Also, if you dart an animal from the ground and it runs, the chances of it going down in a bad place and lying uncomfortably can actually cause the animal to bloat and it can die. If you don't get there quick enough. With a helicopter you can keep an eye on the animal and you can get it into a safe workable area for the ground teams, which is really important. I've seen so much bad stuff, it's actually not even funny. I think the worst thing I've ever seen is a rhino without a horn that's been hacked off, still alive and walking. It's gut-wrenching. As far as numbers go, I certainly have lost track of all the numbers of dead rhino, and I honestly don't want to keep count, but this is one of those things you never get used to. It's absolutely gut-wrenching, and I don't think anyone could ever get used to the savage brutality that goes into this and the way it's done.
Rhino Revolution works together with various reserves and officials and raises funds to sponsor dehornings on both private reserves and in the Greater Kruger. So rhino dehorning involves the removal of the horn to protect the rhino from poaching or to make it a much lower risk from poaching. What happens is there is a vet team, a ground team, and then various other official people involved. The vet will be in the helicopter. He will then dart the rhino from the air. The rhino will then go down, and his assistants and part of the vet team on the ground will then go through to the rhino, give it oxygen, stabilize it, and then the grounds team can move in. It's very important that the rhino is positioned correctly to minimize the pressure and the effect on the lungs and the organs. Then the grounds team will then remove the horn using a chainsaw, and once the horn is removed with the chainsaw, it is then ground down with an angle grinder to remove any extra horn that's sticking out. And then we paint oil over the top of the horn to reduce cracking, and the animal is revived and it is allowed to wake up slowly, get up and then walk on its way. The horn is also kept in storage at a safeguarded facility so as to reduce the risk for the people on the ground on site. Unfortunately, part of the job is that we are responding to animals in distress. So we've seen pangolins that have been confiscated from the trade and kept in awful conditions. Likewise, we've rescued orphans that have been orphaned as a result of their mothers being killed. And I think one of the worst things I've seen was unfortunately a female cow white rhino that was poached, and she left behind a very, very young orphan that was incredibly traumatized. And I actually went out with the vet to fetch her, and she then came to Rhino Revolution to be rehabilitated. But watching her whole process, from seeing her dead mother to crying for her at night to being rehabilitated, that was unfortunately very sad for me.
Okay, so I've been flying since the 80s. I've been in conservation all my life, worked in conservation as well as being a conservation pilot. I think things have changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years with the increase in poaching, where previously there was 1 or 2 incursions a month. We're now having an incursion almost on a daily basis. So we've become very busy on the aviation side. I think the problem's bad. It's a lot worse than people think. I think we've got less rhino than people think we have. If you look at the statistics over time of what we had and what we have now, it's quite alarming, it's quite disturbing. I think every flight we do makes a difference, and if we can carry on making a difference, well then we've done our job. We do conservation flying. Conservation flying can be broken into a few different spheres really. So on a daily basis we'll do patrol flights in high risk areas, checking that everything is in order, checking that there are no rhino carcasses. If we have an incident or if we have gunshots, that's a contact, we respond. We're basically an eye in the sky, coordinating projects from above. So it's a variety of different things that we do. We also do disruption flights. If we know that there are people in an area, we'll go and try and disrupt to stop them from shooting a rhino. Or suppression flights. If we know they're there and we're working with ground teams and helicopters, we'll be the suppression and try and slow the people down so that the other guys can do their job and make a successful arrest, hopefully. And then just a general bird's eye view of what's going on from above. There's a lot of different things that you see. A lot of, I don't know what's worse, you see a lot of mutilated animals, you see a lot of animals in pain. I think not too long ago I saw a rhino cow that was shot, and she'd been wounded, and she went and died, and she had a young calf trying to suckle from her dead mother with hyenas feeding on the carcass at the same time. And that really does hit home, and that shows you how real the problem is.
My name's Joel Alves, and I've been a wildlife veterinarian now for the last 3 to 4 years. Predominantly, we're working in the open system reserves in the Greater Kruger National Park, mainly involved in conservation related projects. So that can be anything from snare removals, emergency wound treatments on endangered species, returning escaped animals back to the reserves where they came from, translocations, rhino dehornings, collarings for research, and that's pretty much most of the work across any wildlife species out this side of the world. So unfortunately, most of our call-outs are extremely time sensitive, in the sense that if we've got an escaped animal that's running around somewhere, we've got to get it back into the reserve as soon as possible. If we've got a snared animal out in the field or a wounded animal, very often the people only have visual of that animal when they're with it. So if we leave it and, a night goes by, they can move great distances and then we don't find them again, so we can't treat them. So most of these cases, if it's an emergency, it's very time sensitive, and it's sort of, as soon as you can pack the vehicle and get out there, or get out there in the helicopter, then that's when you want to be out there in the field. So the worst cases we've seen out in the field are generally poaching survive, or poaching cases in rhino where the animals actually survived. And then beyond that, really terrible snare injuries that can be horrific, especially around the neck area when it's cutting into the windpipe and the trachea. They can be seriously severe injuries, and sometimes you wonder how these animals have survived for that long. So I'd say human-dominated or human-caused wounding or issues is our biggest problem, and probably the worst cases that we see. It's not too often that something occurs naturally where it's that bad.
For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can do your part to help these amazing animals in need, and together we can make a difference.
With your help, we can make a difference.
Together, we can make a difference.
With your help, we can make a difference.
Together, we can make a difference.
Because with your help, we can make a difference.